Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Danbrook, and this is the first recording of our Georgina Speaks podcast. Myself and co-host Martin Nash. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good day.
Okay.
Now you're recording. Right on. So I'll cut this off and start again. So that I'll start mine recording. And this one's already recording, so I'm going to stop it. Delete that little piece. So if you can just do this once. Do the same.
Right.
Yeah, harder.
Oh.
That's how you sync everything up later.
Oh, is that right?
From the two mics, you'll get that slap, and you'll see it on the, and you sync it up. Sync it up. Yeah, so that's how that works. So, okay, so what I'll do is, I'm just going to start, everybody. I'm just going to start. So what am I doing? I'm doing a podcast. Why am I doing a podcast? So before I get into that, I'd like to introduce my co-host, and that would be Martin Nash. And a little bit of history about it. He was my manager in 1982. Geez, I am getting old. 1982, when I started in real estate, and he just, for my purposes, he was one of the first people in my life. I was 25 at the time that actually knew I wasn't a bad person before I did. So, and he kind of let me know it at that time, and then we've been friends ever since. Anyway, so go ahead, Martin.
Well, thanks, Tim, for that compliment, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's called Georgina Speaks, I understand. Is that it?
Yeah, probably should have said that.
We should introduce it perhaps as well.
People are going to want pertinent information. Eh?
Yeah. I may have some information because I've been a resident of Georgina for 64 years now.
Wow.
And, that's a long time. And I've seen it, you hear your relatives say, I remember when it used to be fields. Well, I do. And I remember the lake being pretty crystal clear. When I was a kid, we could swim at Young's Harbor and fish at Young's Harbor, and the water was great. Good fishing, good swimming, and now we can't really go down there. The fishing's not too bad, but you can't swim in the south end of the lake anymore because it's not so good. So
no.
Apparently, we're going to discuss some of these issues about the lake. So that'll be an interesting thing. It's our biggest resource we have here in Georgina, and we should use it properly, and it should be fun.
Yep. Okay, so now that you know who we are, a couple of things. First thing I wanted to say was I'm gonna shut my phone off. The reason I haven't shut my phone off is my grandmother in Reina, Cuba, passed away this morning. She's at that age or whatever, and I posted on Facebook, and about a bazillion people have been telling me, sorry for your loss, we care. And I just wanted to say that's how I view the world. I believe that's how people are, and I'll always believe that in every area, whether you're talking about all the upheaval nowadays, with Black Lives Matter. In our society, people are generally good. So why is all this happening? I don't know. I have no idea, but I'll never stop believing that people are inherently good. So I just wanted to address that while I was at it. Now I'm going to shut my phone off. So, what was the catalyst for doing a podcast? For me, it was originally the phosphorus levels in the Lake Simcoe, the health of the lake and the environment in this area. And what really got me going to begin with was that study they did in 2009.
Right. Basically
said, they put all the alarm bells up, and we got this, and we need to get phosphorus levels. And one of the main recommendations was a 10-year plan to reduce phosphorus levels by 50%. That was categorical, done by the Conservation Authority. We spent gazillion dollars to do the study, all the experts. And, of course, none of it got done. Odds and ends got done. Some trees got planted. There were some things got done. I shouldn't say nothing got done, but no plan. And then in 2019, they come up with an all-new study that said, just kidding. We really didn't have to do all that. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Whatever. To me, it seemed like bull crap, and... So there's that aspect of it. So somewhere as we move ahead, as we go along, other podcasts and so on, that would be a major one, and that was my catalyst. So I don't know what you've heard on that stuff.
Well, they put
you would know. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you, if anybody, would know what it's like to be in a boat and look down and see clean water or whatever. Historically.
Right. Well, they put the alarm bells out, and for a good reason. And sometimes it's better to overreact, in this type of thing, in the environmental stuff, than to underreact, because a lot of times once the damage has been done to a ecosystem, it's hard to bring it back. we can talk about lots of things in Newfoundland. They did the cod, and they're trying to bring that back. And,
Yep.
and did they overreact by shutting it down? We all have to think about that kind of thing. So when they put the big red flags up about all the phosphorus loading into the lake, it's quite correct. It was causing a lot of trouble. But remember too that what we have here is a situation, where we had the zebra mussels come in, and they cleaned up a lot of the lake. I mean, but then they became increasingly too heavy, for the lake. But that did really clean it up. I mean, and then of course now the water's nice and clear. Well, the weeds decided, well, now we're going to grow because we got lots of phosphorus to grow with, and we got lots of sunshine. So so these studies that they made back then, were pretty fluid. There's lots of changes in an ecosystem, and our lake is one of those. Lots of changes.
I haven't figured out if you're sucking up at the Conservation Authority or not yet. You can't be, because you got no more developments to do, eh? So, no, I'm just kidding. But so anyway, I hope to get to the truth on some of that stuff as we move ahead. I did speak to a really good gentleman by the name of Peter Faraty. He's a really good guy. He's environmental. He does it. He calculates a lot of phosphorus levels and stuff for developers, for containment purposes and all the rest of it. That's another whole new kettle of fish. The new study also put in place a thing where developers don't have to pay off politicians and bureaucrats anymore.
Oh yeah.
If they want to pollute, they just get to take it right in and put it on the director's desk, because there's a formula now that if you can't meet the zero deadline, the zero emissions level that they recommend, that they say we need, then they have an offset where you can just allow so much pollution to go out and just pay them so much a ton. And,
well, boy, that sounds like a wonderful thing, doesn't it?
yeah, then so that's one way to eliminate graft. I guess just take it right in the front door.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course, but I'm not. I think that's a pretty disgusting.
Yeah, you're allowed to pollute as long as you pay for it.
Right.
I guess the carbon tax is somewhat like that as well, I would think.
Yeah,
And,
the carbon tax. It is.
Somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat like it's not somewhat. It is exactly like that. The only thing that I can say on the carbon tax from my own experience was I read worldwide carbon tax, and there's some Nobel Prize winning scientists that have done the calculations and so on, and they were looking at it as an opportunity to adjust both global environment, address all global warming. And I won't say it's a hoax. Even if I thought it, I wouldn't say it here, because so. Anyway, their take on carbon taxes, it would be a wonderful opportunity to both balance the emissions, all that stuff, but equalize economies and stuff. So there's something else at play there. I'm not sure.
Well, at least they're trying something, and and instead of doing nothing, they're trying some things. I'm not sure how effective they'll be, but I guess we'll find out over time.
Well, the politicians do it for the people. And the developers figure out how they can rip it off once the politicians have done it for the people, using what the politicians did, So I don't know. I have no idea how any of that, and what a grade 8 education. So I'm going to have a really stellar opinion on. So I guess so there's that, and then there's all of the. I put a post the other day about the police. And I mentioned that in my, over the course of my lifetime, my experiences with them has been pretty good. And I kind of generally, one specific thing I mentioned was when I was drunk one night and I stole the flag out of the old PP station in Calidar, which
Yeah.
I didn't know that it wasn't a good idea at the time because I was drunk.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great thing for the hunting camp, because we were back hunting. And so anyway, and then when the cop finally caught up to me, he was in charge of the station that night. So he got some good ribbon, eh? And he was really decent. He let me go. He said, promise me you'll come back tomorrow night with the flag, and I did. I went back, and he fingerprinted me and arrested me. And facing the judge was no picnic with a stunt like that at 35. So
They don't like any of that kind of thing.
so to make a long story even longer, when I had posted it, what I was posting was, there's always idiots in every profession, and even the police don't like the idiots in their profession. And I got a lot of. I actually have some of it with me, but I got a lot of feedback about it. The real good thing I thought I was really happy about was it was all fairly constructive. Like the good cops have to start sticking up for weeding out them themselves and so on. And but they all said, we know that 90% of the cops, 95 are good people and dedicated public servants,
Right.
but they got to learn to start sticking up against. And I have some thoughts on that. But what has been your experience with all of that?
Well, I think that again, it's like in any profession. There's good and bad. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether they're teachers, police, anything.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get good ones and bad ones. I'm sure you can remember some of your good teachers and remember some of your bad ones. And I'm sure people have lots of stories. I haven't had too many with the police, but you know, no bad experiences, of course.
Yeah.
You know, it was they have a job to do, and it's a pretty scary job at times. And I think what they need is to have is you know, to look at themselves and to maybe have a bit more training to deal with people, because
Yeah.
there's lots of crazies out there, and there's lots of people that are trying to take advantage of any system. And you know, our police are there to serve and protect, and for the most part they do. And we get some bad apples, and that's what happened in this last little while. You know, that there's some bad people in the police department, but they're not all bad, as you said.
Yeah, the one thing I was looking up a little bit about it was I looked up police brutality, just you know, historically what's going on, and I clipped here and I just printed a one section where they said, you know, the result of studies in the past, and we need to have more involvement in the past. You know, we haven't had quite the level of involvement of public scrutiny of police work and stuff since the past. And what, in the end, what I really realized when I went through and started, this has been around for a long time. It raises its ugly head, and then everybody makes a bunch of commitment, and then it dies away, and then that commitment tends to wane again, and then they don't actually do the follow-up. But there's a lot of training now that they get 10 times more training in Canada for this sort of thing than they do in the States. That's for sure.
Right.
And where the politicians meet the police chiefs and the unions, and you know, and then the people it's, you know, who wants to do a job with the public looking over their shoulder, that kind of thing. So then they have to police themselves. But if anybody who has ever had a family member who's an idiot, or you know, druggie and alcoholic, I happen to be the black sheep in my family, so if you have one, what are you going to turn your brother in? So there's that mentality. I think that the reforms have to come from outside of the family of police itself, because,
Yeah.
like, not watchdogs. I don't like the term watchdog. It's like you're watching a thief or something. You know, watchdog for cooperation, public input, whatever. I think it has to be groups around, and I think the unions. I believe they're the ones that really should be getting involved with the public, getting them involved so that they can get, yeah. And there's some real bad asses, man, and there's some real bad people, and they're headstrong, and that's how they get ahead. They get up, they work their way up through, and so it exists, but they checks and balances. I guess I have no answers. I'm just telling you what I found out of it.
Well, perhaps we can have some people in it maybe have some opinions about that.
We'll take a look back at it going down the road. So that was one issue of the day. The other issue was this was I get way too much time on my hands. So they were talking about monuments now because they're taking down. I don't think I want to put a Confederate flag over the Queen's Park there. So, but what I was finding was so I went looking into it. Okay, because there are people getting up in arms here about different. Probably should pick this up. I'll probably pick my voice up a little better, eh? Hang on, let me just crank it up. I'm fading fast. There we go. So anyway, what I found was I picked one, Dundas Street, named after some idiot named Dundas. Actually, I shouldn't be disrespectful. I think he was a general or some damn thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, what it was the guy named Dundas. That was Lord Grave Simcoe's buddy. You know, they're all in the military and from England, and there, he actually managed to prolong the abolishing of slavery by 15 years at the time when England was trying to abolish slavery. He managed to interject and stop them from abolishing it for 15 years, which tells you who he was. What got my attention about it at the very first was I had read somewhere that he was one of the architects of the Aboriginal people's orphanages.
Right.
Here.
Yes.
And which right away, scum of the earth, you know. And I think one of the big things for me anyway was that people talk about, we should be taking these statues down about people we revere when we're, revering. Nobody reveres those people. That's just something they named. The guy named a street after his buddy. That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
To give his buddy, a big good feeling about himself or some stupid thing. But so I think the more productive thing to do would be, let's get some plaques going up telling the history of the idiot.
Yeah.
Put them at the end of the street. The street's named after this idiot. More like an education about, okay, nobody reveres this person. The street just happens to be named after him, and go the opposite, like a true representation of history, so that people would learn, as opposed to just mob. Let's change it. Let's take and then nobody learns anything at the end of it. They just feel better because they got somebody's name taken off or something.
Well, yeah, like my friend said that guy was no good. Well, it's better to have the real history facts, and you can decide for yourself whether you like it or not. And in lots of cases it won't be very good, but at least you'll know that. Yep. And it's a good idea. You don't need to change all the names and all the stuff because of the.
Well, if you're gonna spend a lot of energy on it, which is great. I mean, that's a good thing to spend energy on, and but let's get out the facts and let's start reflecting a civil conversation. I mean, you're over there. We should take our monuments down. Where we want to. Who cares? Like, we should be discussing this. Okay, what's the history here? The guy was a monster. And they named, and his buddy then named a street after him because he was a friend of a monster, So what do you do about it today? You make sure everybody knows that's why that street got named, not because we revere him. And here's the truth about all of it. Like, that's a more productive.
Right. Well, we've got lots of those in Georgina in the sense of names after people. We got Sam Nacello, Nacello Drive, and we got Rodale Drive, and we got lots of locals. That got lots of history in this area.
Haven't got a Peter Street yet. Man, oh man. Yeah, well, that's a whole other story. But we do have a Peter's Corners. Who I talked to the other day was the guy that used to own that vehicle parked out here in the driveway.
Right.
Yeah, Bob Pollock.
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
I haven't seen him for a while.
Martin bought a vehicle off somebody in the city, and the guy said, "Oh, somebody up in Keswick used to own this. Do you know Bob Pollock?" And of course, Martin grew up with him, so I mean.
Yeah, I went to university with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of funny. And anyway, when I talked to Bob about lots of different things, but he found Peter's Corners exists. There's that intersection of Glenwoods and Woodbine is Peter's Corners, right. But the reason it doesn't appear on any road maps because it's a train stop.
Oh.
Originally. And if you go overlook on the fence right now, the Hydro still calls it Peter's Corners, and there's a sign there. I have a picture of it, but I'll maybe edit it in if I get too boring. I'll edit in the picture of Peter's Corners sign.
Oh, well, that's a new one for me. I didn't know that one.
No, that's it. And then but he told me I can find it on. I got to go on Google and go on the old railroad maps, and it's there. Peter's Corners. He said he's seen it the other day. So Bob's amazing for history, eh?
Well, yeah. His family's been here a long time. I know his dad and his dad.
Yeah.
And the Pollocks were farmers here, and and I don't know how they're related to the Bob I know, but I think somewhat related. And I think we used to Pollock Turnip Farm. I used to buy turnips from Pollock Turnip Farm.
Oh, he's got the history back to the 1800s. You ever heard of a place called Drytown?
No.
It's a town that existed in. He was telling me about it the other day. He said there's over from Peter's, like I don't know, over the other side on one of the concessions, like Warden or Kennedy. One of them, I can't remember which one he said, but there's a place called Drytown that was there in the 1800s, and then it's gone now. And who did a really good song about towns that used to be there and that blew away is, I'll have to get a hold of him, is Blaine Fulbrook. Right. He did Dairytown. Is there Dairytown that used to be or something, or Darrentown? Or I can't remember the name of it, but he did a song about it, and it's just a long rambling song, and it's like the Old West where you see the tumbleweeds go by a town that used to be. Well, his song is kind of like that. It's neat. I might play it on the podcast as we go down the road. Right. And so I don't want to ramble on. It's my habit. But so we'll address kind of that stuff. Another really good one is the Sybil's Point. Well, Sybil's Point is one. But the Briars, I sitting in my car on my phone, waiting for somebody to show up at the job, and then so I went looking for, what was I looking for? I was looking at the history of something, and I came across the Briars. So I looked at the history of the Briars. Well, it was Sybil's, who had just died, one of the senior one who passed away, I think last year, in the last few months anyway. And so I went looking for his name, and then so I went to Briars, and I went. 1818, the actual 200-acre piece of land for the Briars was deeded from on a government, they called it a grant or whatever they called it, to a guy by the name of Boucher, who was a retired captain in the British Army, or half paid or whatever they called it. And he was the original one, and then he built some stuff there, and then he sold it to Sybil, and then his brother is actually the founder of Sutton, and then I think he's the founder of Purple. I'm not sure which, the Boucher people,
Right.
and then the Sybils went on to the Briars. You played golf with the Briars ever?
I have, not lately, but I have. Yeah.
I never have. I always I'm an orchard guy. You know, you go up
Okay.
there and spend
me
night.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that history kind of intrigued me. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can. So enough about the history of Georgina. So anybody who's interested, we're going to get to some of that, and I'll have to figure out. We haven't figured out how we're going to segment it out yet, but Martin and I'll discuss it and try to avoid a boring format. So anyway, that gets us to that. I'm trying to think of what the other thing that we were going to discuss, or what I was going to discuss. Where it's on my list here somewhere, I'm sure.
Well, I'll give you a bit of a break to look at that.
Yeah.
I remember I went to University of Toronto, and I used to tell people I was from Keswick, and they said, "Well, where's that?" And I had to explain to them where it was. If I said I was from Jackson's Point, everybody knew where it was. It was a real hustle bustle, with that train or the streetcar or whatever the heck it was, the trolley going up there, and they had a big dance and the Red Barn and all that stuff. Everybody knew where Jackson's Point was, but nobody knew where Keswick was. So I used to just tell people I'm from Jackson's Point, and then that was great for me because they oh yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah.
So it was well known in Toronto.
I moved here in '77 with my daughter when she was a baby, and my I won't say one of my exes, but one of my exes, so I have more than one. So I'm on the Walter Drive, and I lived right down the bottom end where the old Smallwood house. People who have been around forever in that area know the Smallwoods, and actually Dave and Wally Mother all grew up right at the top of Walter Drive. And when I moved down there, Wally had just bought the house off his dad, because his dad was moving up north, and he bought it so that his family could finish growing up there, kind of not lose the homestead there. So yeah, I remember back. That was when you met me right
around that time. Yeah,
right around that time when I started in real estate in '82. So the other thing I wanted to address, I'd forgotten to get to it here, but at some point, I think I mentioned it actually, the white privilege.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I about that issue, I just wanted to say I don't want to talk about slavery, and I don't want to talk about the police brutality in. I don't mean I don't want to talk about it, but it's not what I'm looking into right now. What I'm looking into is, having lived my whole life, born white my whole life. It's different in Canada than it is in the States. We've got our own messes to be ashamed of, like the natives and all the rest of it. But so privilege. I remember distinctly being 17 years old, and I could walk down on any street corner in Concord, point at a factory, and walk in, and my name would be at the top of the list of who to hire, no matter who was on it. Because I was a white boy from home, and I know it. I used to talk about that all the time, and it never dawned on me that's what white privilege was. And then I looked at it like, well, why wouldn't you? It's your hometown boy. We're all white people, and they're. So I didn't know the difference. I didn't know the downside of it, because we didn't have the American history of. We had people coming from other countries here, and I was never one for being nasty about any of those issues. But it went on around you. You had nasty friends who had that prejudiced.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think ignorance was bliss in a way in that respect, because you
Couldn't have said it better.
Didn't really notice that was happening. And I think now with the Black Lives Matter and all of the stuff that goes around that now, it's actually more difficult to talk about it now because everybody's listening. I think you could have said some things 30 years ago and not even really thought about it, and had your white privilege. And
now you have to think before you wisecrack.
Yeah, but now, when you're talking about this, people are going to listen. And I think it's a great thing because dialogue is the only way to solve these things.
100%.
Inside the communities and outside of the communities. This is what needs to be done. We need to talk about it, and it's great. The COVID-19 that we're in. We might as well, if we're going to date this podcast. And our great haircuts. It's great. We actually have a moment to think about some things that you didn't really think about before, and
100%.
And all you hear on the TV is, we can do this together. We can do this together, and it's so true. The only way you're going to solve all the troubles and man-to-man troubles and all these things is through dialogue and doing it together, because you can't do it separately. You have to
Constructive,
do it
respectful,
Yes.
disagreements, dialogues, your own experience, and the N word. I finally dawned on me the N word doesn't mean somebody from Newfoundland. You know, like CNN, the N word. You know, I'm going, oh wow, the CNN cares about our people from Newfoundland. I thought it was pretty nice, but. In all seriousness, yeah, you know what? My daughter was, my kids raised me on these issues.
Yeah.
When it cut to the truth is, I remember when my daughter was about, 11 or 12 years old or 10 years old, she came home one day and she was talking about some kid, and I can't say retarded because you can't say it anymore.
Right.
There was a kid at school developmentally handicapped, whatever the soft term is these days. So I don't necessarily agree with all these politically correct terms. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, you can do
so,
that.
Yeah, we'll do that one later. But what happened was she was talking about this developmentally handicapped child that was having trouble with somebody or something. And I asked her right away, you weren't picking on that kid, were you? Like I was concerned. I didn't want my kids to be like that. And she looked at me like I had two heads, like, holy gee, Dad, where'd that come from? Oh, like, it was a logistical thing. The kid was having trouble with something. It had nothing to do with that. Nobody was picking on anybody. But right away, that's where I came from.
Right.
And she looked at me like, I come from the moon, man. Like, who would ever pick on that was the first time I realized that my kids' generation, didn't have the dialogue.
You hit the nail on the head on that one, Tim, because I think the younger generation, far younger than you and I, they don't care about homosexuals and all that stuff. They don't even give it a second thought. You and I, when somebody says that, our ears perk up and say, "Oh, what are you talking about that for? Like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
The younger people, it's not really an issue for them or anything, and so that they're learning well, I think, and they're being brought up properly, like you just said.
Yeah.
And that we all are inclusive, and I'm sure that throughout my life I haven't been. Not on purpose, but I just haven't been, and I think it's a generational type of thing.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I grew up, there was no black people around. There was no Indians or Pakistani or Asian. Like there was no other ethnic groups around, and so there was that aspect of it. So they were something. So you didn't understand them at all.
Right.
They were somebody who behaved other than you behaved, and so you didn't understand. And then it's really easy to make yourself feel better by making like they're less than or something. I don't know how to explain it, and I never subscribed to it, but I was around it my whole life with other people and so on, and I don't know. I had my own personal issues so anything that ever hurt anybody bothered me, so I always kind of avoided it.
Right.
Yeah, but it was around me. I remember the day Martin Luther King got shot, actually, and I remember I was 10 years old, standing in my driveway with my brother's older friends, Luke and O'Neill and John Connolly, like they're in Aurora. We lived in Aurora. Right. And I remember them talking about the white people are going to have to hide in the sewers down there now. No. And I was 10, and I was only 10 hanging out with them, so I didn't know. They were older than me. But this is what I was thinking about this morning. The pressure from people around you. Like when I grew up, if you stuck up for, went against somebody who was prejudiced and said, hey, you were going to get the wrath.
Yeah.
So you stayed quiet and you told the line, or you didn't let on that it disgusted you, even if it did. So the silence was the triangle, the victim, the offender, and the observer.
Yes. Yeah.
The offender doesn't do it. The observer does.
That's right. And when we observe this now and we're talking about it, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more difficult. It's going to be a more difficult time for us to acknowledge all these things and be in that triangle as observers or whatever we are, victims and so on.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you put it that way. But we all have to stop. When we observe things, we have to kind of report them and let people know that that's not right. We're all equal human beings on this planet, and the sooner we get around to that, it'll be a whole better place for everybody.
Yeah, it's like I met a guy the other day. He's a black guy, and his family comes originally from the Barbados, but he was born and raised in Toronto.
Right.
His name's Ed, really nice guy. And so when this all came up, I called him, and we'll interview him because he's very well spoken, easygoing guy, and he looks, I think, at things through a positive light, like a positive, constructive. Even things he disagrees with, he'll say, I disagree with that, but it won't be a big hullabaloo,
Right. Well, that'll be interesting to do that for sure, because we need to look through all kinds of different lenses here at this type of thing, and even with regards to culture and in regards to our lake and regards to Georgina. Everybody has different views about everything, and it's really nice to use this platform to see what some people have to say.
Did you want to talk about your cancer at all?
No.
Or would you rather not? You'd rather not?
Well, I have cancer, but that's all right. I got a couple of buses lined up to get me, but they're not going to get me yet. So.
Well, I'm sorry to bring it up, and I'll edit it out. The reason I ask is because you're pissing me off a bit. Because as always, you're a bit of an overachiever. Most people are, struggling and fighting, and we're gonna fight the good fight, and they have one, and then you got three and beat two of them, and you're working on the last one now and showing off as always. And,
but no, I'm going to be all right. I think. I've got my mind in the right place. I have naturopathic medicine in the right place, and I've got the doctors. So, they're going to do what they can do, and that'll be fine with me.
Right on.
None of us are coming out of this alive, and
So. So we don't know when.
So I don't know when my bus is coming, but I had to shoo a couple of them away. But who knows when? But no, I don't mind talking about it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. What? It's a really. My uncle was like that. He found out he had cancer, and he said, "I'm going to beat it," and he died 3 years later. Like on the phone telling his buddies I'm going to the hospital because I can't make golf or cards or whatever that day, telling the ambulance driver, pipe down and wait in the ambulance, I'm talking to my friends here. Like literally, that's it. That night he went and died. So in my estimation, cancer didn't take a day of his life. Your time is your time. You got no say in that. That's right. Yeah. If you piss and moan for the last 6 months, then it got 6 months of your life.
That's right. Yeah. No. That's the bad part. And I think a lot. It's a very difficult disease to deal with. For a lot of people.
Well, it's such a heavy word.
Yeah, the big C word.
Such an ominous word. Yeah, my dad was terrified of it. Yeah.
But I think anyway, I'm feeling well, and I thank you for your thoughts about that.
But thanks for talking about it because it's you fall right in line with what I believe to be a really positive influence for people that are there. I respect it 100%. So. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Every day, it's quality of life, and we have to live for today, every day. And when we do that, we can have a happiness every day of our lives if we just can do that.
So we're right around the 31 mark, and I actually believe that this is probably going to be able to go almost exactly as it was because it was a good constructive, wide-reaching. So this is our introductory to the podcast that is Georgina Speaks, and what else was I going to say? When I edit this and play it out, I'll have a country. Every podcast will have an original song by a local artist because I believe in that 100%. And I wanted to talk about one hero, and his name's Jack Gibbons. And he fought long and hard to save the North Gwillimbury Forest. And I've been in those fights with people that just huge giants. Like you're just up against a giant. And they got all the money in the deep purses. In my case, it was the town, and in his case, it was developers and the Conservation Authority. And he stuck up for what he believed in, stuck it out to the end. And a special thanks to Dave Neeson because they were getting ready to pass it all through, and he called a special council meeting and proposed a resolution, and enough people showed up that they got it stopped. And so him supporting Jack Gibbons, but Jack, he put his life on the line for that. And,
no, I'm sure he did. It was very controversial. But really, he did a great job. And when we talk about our lake and our environment, there's nothing better than that one.
Yeah,
because that's it's only every little piece counts. I mean, if we all say, well, that 10 acres there doesn't matter, and that 10 acres doesn't matter, all of a sudden there's no water for the farmers, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of issues. And so if we can just save a little bit of it at a time, if we every year we can save and help the lake a little bit, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now, it'll be a better place to live. And Georgina's right in the middle of it.
So in my estimation, I couldn't find any place to find a cape, so I could give it to the guy, but he's a hero to me. That he's a local hero. He for what he does and what he believes in, sticking up for what he believes in. And the other one was it's my mind is getting older. What can I tell you? There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, the Pefferlaw Dam. Did I mention it already?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so the Pefferlaw Dam is something that most people are aware of around now. But what happened was the Conservation Authority ran out of funding, so they can't fix the bridge where they go out to maintain the dam.
Right.
So instead of saying we need $250,000, we're short in funding, they did a whole study that said, okay, why don't we just let the whole ecosystem die and don't bother fixing the dam? 200 years it's been there. it's a historical landmark, if nothing else. But anyway, I don't want to get too into it, but we're going to address that going down the road.
Well, you have a good template for that one in a sense because of the High Street dam that broke years ago. Then they fixed it. I don't know exactly that. I don't remember the whole story now, but they let that one go for a couple of years until they fixed the dam, and it's a lot better now that they did that. Now maybe the Pefferlaw one might be a similar type of thing where they're destroying an ecosystem.
It was a ridiculous stunt to highlight their lack of funding, something like that. I don't know what it was. I kind of do know what it was, but
Well, let's get down to the bottom of that one.
I talked to a gentleman by the name of Haig, and I talked to Karen Wolf about it.
Right.
And she has her take on it, and she supports repairing the dam, like getting to the bottom of repairing the dam, and make sure it doesn't happen again, sort of thing. And she does, and and Haig was one of the main residents on it. So I've talked to him and to her, and I think he'll be willing to present an interview for us.
Perfect.
And we might have to get a system going where you'll take off and take the equipment and go and interview somebody.
Sure. And
then bring it back, and we'll make it part of the podcast, and I'll do the same at times.
Perfect.
Okay, so there's that Pefferlaw Bridge. And Keswick Rednecks. Nah, I don't think we're going to. Well, it's funny because when I come to Keswick in '77, there was a couple of them, and we called them Lugans, I think is what we called them. But and then you're from Keswick when I guess you can't tell any of those jokes anymore.
No, we're gonna have to keep that.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, thank you so much, Martin, for being here, and I'm looking forward to it. So if anybody's wondering what the criteria for going ahead is, Martin's agreed to do this for as long as he can put up with me, so I'm grateful for that. And I have some people that have funded what I'm doing, and with not an advertising, but just people that believe in what I'm doing. So there's some funding there. We're going to be looking for sponsors going down the road, but only when I can do it responsibly, account for it, and only people who will mind the damn business as far as what I say when I'm sitting at this table. So
right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
And so as long as that's the criteria, and especially mind their business when you're saying what you say, because you're lucky. You're beyond reproach. I mean, I gotta explain myself every time I open my mouth. So anyway, that's it, Martin. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thanks you, Tim. I enjoyed this, and look forward to the next one.
Yep.
Bye.
Right on. So you can hit your button over there.
All right.
My back so I can get back home to you. You worry about me being too busy, I can tell by all the hell you give me, but don't you stress, some of it's getting through. Making a living, making money, just trying to make ends meet. Making wheels turn from Monday on, making music come into the week. Making memories sure is hard to do when you ain't got time to make a life. But if you want to make me fall for you, baby, I'll damn sure make the time. I'll damn sure make the time. I barely got time to blink my eyes, been playing these bars trying to get it right, but when they close, I want you next to me. Making a living, making money, just trying to make ends meet. Making wheels turn from Monday on, making music come into the week. Making memories sure is hard to do when you ain't got time to make a life. But if you wanna make me fall for you, baby, I'll damn sure make the time. I know I'm not around all the time, that don't mean that I love you less. This life keeps me running every day, but for you, I take a rest. Making memories sure are take a life, but if you wanna make me fall